Hi, this is Lindsay McCracken, and I'm presenting my AEP 800 Module 5 Barriers to Web 2.0. For start with my article summaries, I felt like each article discussed a different aspect truly of bringing technology into education and using Web 2.0 in that issue. The first one, Barriers to Using Web 2.0 in 21st Century Schools, talked about a variety of issues related to technology in education and talked about some problems and some possible solutions and aspects that schools could look at. But a main takeaway that I had is that while technology can really revolutionize learning if the right conditions exist, it's up to the school administrator and the district administrators to make sure those conditions exist and to really analyze, from our school infrastructure to what students have access to at home, what's the best learning solution for our students. With 7 common barriers that obstruct tech adoption in education, obviously, it's talked about technology obstacles and talked about the need for a technology vision and having to kind of redesign the role of teachers in the classroom so that students are always at the center of learning and how technology can help do that. Additionally, looking at the achievement gap and with that, the digital divide, innovations, technology costs, thinking outside our curriculum and our school's infrastructure. These are all things that have to be addressed. And I think that's something that my school personally, we're really working through some of those right now as we adopt our one-to-one Chromebook initiative. With the digital divide, a quarter of the nation is without broadband. Talked about that digital divide and gap that exists between people who have broadband or some type of high speed internet and those who don't. And that whether intentional or no, it's kind of widening a gap between the haves and the have nots. One thing that was a very personal takeaway for me is that, the article talked about people in rural areas that don't have access, but I live in a not so rural part of Kansas City. And just because of when our house was built, we didn't have any sort of internet access for a couple of years after moving in because the cable company and anybody who provided high speed internet felt like it wasn't worth it until the rest of our neighborhood existed. And so for years we used something that we purchased from a mobile provider and could plug into our computer. And then when it was finally available, we were able to get that. So that kind of struck home with me that it's not just people who live in these very rural areas. Sometimes it just depends on what's going on in your town. With open educational resources, movement scales up. Talked about the expansion of OER to the public. I know that we use some OER resources that were discussed in the article. And one thing that I've even noticed is that it used to be a lesson was available or a unit available, and now it's an entire year's worth of curriculum that you can get on and look at. And so that's kind of a huge accomplishment, but also others are looking to it for viability, just looking at what is the best choice for our students. When we talk about the digital divide and if it can be resolved, I try to be positive. I think that number one, we have to define it that it refers to that digital gap between people who have access to broadband and those who don't. And I thought it was interesting that the Secretary of Education claimed that it consists of a lack of opportunity in school, after school, as well as at home. So people are aware of this issue, and it's not just something that occurs in school. It's, all of what students have access to throughout their day. I think that it can be resolved, but it's going to take support and enforcement to do so. That providers aren't always going to want to spend the money on rural areas and wiring those because of a low profit probability. And the same thing, like I mentioned earlier in our neighborhood, they didn't want to do it just because there weren't enough houses. So they didn't want to do it until the profit existed within that space. And so I really agree with Rob Blick, the teacher that they mentioned in the article, that, these power companies, they don't want to do these things, but it's the modern day equivalent of a highway system, or almost, I was thinking earlier, is it a utility, is it a necessity? And honestly, for a lot of students right now, it is. So I have kids who sit at McDonald's and do their homework, or go to the library and do homework, or even sit in the library parking lot when the library is closed just so they can hook up to the internet there. And so I think that shows what a necessity it really is in our current age. And an issue that also has to be resolved is not only do people need the access, but we have to find a way to make it affordable. With the skill sets 21st century students need, I copied and pasted the profiles of the 21st century learner that exists on our KSDE website. And there's kind of 10 unifying themes they identify, and then 5 unifying themes of the learning environment. But basically, kids need to be creative. They need to have critical thinking and problem thinking or problem solving skills. They need content knowledge along with global awareness. They need to be literate in a variety of areas. They need financial literacy, digital literacy, media literacy. They need to be innovative, creative, need to be able to collaborate. They need to be able to communicate with other people and have those true conversations and collaboration sessions. They need to be problem solvers. They need to have technical skills, and then they need to have employability skills, or what some people call soft skills. In terms of the impact the global economy has had on my personal use of the internet, for me, the internet is the fastest, cheapest, and most efficient way to send and receive information. And the global economy has had a great impact on my use of internet, both at home and at school. So personally, I have my smartphone, I have my computer, iPad, I do my banking online, my shopping online. I even order my groceries online now, and then I drive to the store and pick them up because that's a huge time saver for me. I have a plethora of information at my fingertips, whether it's news or even my social information. And then I use it for entertainment. So reading, movies, research, games, whatever happens to be the entertainment of the moment. Professionally, same kind of concept. I have my smartphone, computer, iPad. I use it for lesson planning, for researching and news, incorporating media, so digital creation, use it to kind of research and facilitate that for students. Blog creation, revamping essays and looking at what could that look like in a 21st century classroom. And then again with engagement. So I think it's had a huge impact for me. When thinking about technology training, I still need to effectively incorporate technology into my position. I need some training with lesson planning with digital media in mind. I need more digital creation skills. I try and I do my best. A lot of times I get students started and then I just kind of see where they end up. Sometimes that's beneficial. Sometimes it's a point of frustration. So I really want more training there. I need to have training in planning with SAMR in mind. So to get from that substitution level to that redefinition and kind of stick higher on the end of that so always modifying and redefining. Coding as a literacy, utilizing OER, determining what's viable, what's not, kind of a personal technology vision before I move on further in my career. Preparing students for post-secondary, so I want to know what employers want. What skills do students absolutely need to have by the time they leave high school? And then I also would like some either training or just time to realign our pacing guides with digital media in mind. When I think about our school district and if they're equipped with 21st century technology, I would say yes, and we're headed in the right direction as well. So right now we have one-to-one Chromebooks 6 through 12, and we're expanding to elementary. We have a 612 technology instructional coach, and again, we're expanding that to elementary. We have a technology team that works on our network and our connectivity. We have smart boards in some classrooms, projectors, training, and then our district's really good about professional development, particularly centered around technology. What are the advantages of innovative practices in schools? I think the advantages are huge, truthfully. A few that I came up with, we have a freedom to experiment within our curriculum. We have access to online resources, higher engagement, increased student voice. So right now with technology, even kids who don't like to speak up can post things and participate in conversations that maybe they wouldn't have in class. Practical hands-on learning, being able to express creativity and design, giving kids hands-on career experience and skills, 21st century career experience, being able to individualize instruction, and then again, providing modifications and accommodations in ways that we couldn't before. When I think about the disadvantages, I would have to say that sometimes the network or infrastructure can be an issue. And when you're always used to having the internet and then one day it's down, things get a little awkward, particularly with ninth graders. So it's just kind of a matter of being able to get on the fly and go not digital that day. Some online resources are costly. Again, we have to look at that issue of teachers' roles being reconsidered. It takes time to get people on the same page. Looking back to that achievement gap and digital divide. So how do we make sure all students have access to what they need all of the time? Curriculum is only one aspect. So that's another thing that I thought of. And then finally, training and professional development needs to be in place. And if it's not, a district or a school will be at a huge disadvantage. I think about experiencing problems with cyberbullying. The first thing that comes to mind, honestly, is smartphones. So it's not necessarily what they're doing on their internet and in the computers, but smartphones, particularly with Snapchat, that's caused a lot of problems this year. Some inappropriate searching has occurred, plagiarism has occurred, and usually it's not from an online source, but just students sharing documents and then turning them in under both names, and then kids using proxy sites. And honestly, I think all of these can be avoided with digital literacy and kind of netiquette education for students. And I kind of end with a quote today that our superintendent uses frequently, that if we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob students of tomorrow. So we have to make sure that we're always pushing toward that 21st century learner and really putting students at the center of our education. Thanks a lot, and have a great night. Bye.